I think when you look at the factors that drove up costs, it's important to distinguish some which were temporary and one which may turn out to be permanent. One thing that drove up prices, costs and prices bid at auctions, was a very significant increase, 150%, 200%, in the cost of steel. And steel accounts for 90% of the construction cost of wind turbine platforms. And that, of course, meant the overall cost went up. Now, the good news is the steel prices are a cycle, and since then, they've come down pretty much to where they were at the beginning of that cycle in 2019. So that's a temporary factor. There was also a set of constraints in particular elements of the supply chain. The point about offshore wind is it's a very complicated piece of engineering. It's a piece of engineering where you have bigger and bigger turbine sizes over time. And so it's dependent on very particular bits of equipment, like ships, which are large enough and flexible enough to deal with these very large turbines. And for a set of reasons, the coordination of the market just didn't work effectively. Those weren't there in time when people wanted to deliver these offshore wind projects. Now that you can address by good policy, we can get it right in the future. The one factor which may turn out to be permanent is the rise of interest rates. You have to split the rise of interest rates into two things: the inflationary element of it, the extent to which nominal interest rates go up simply because of the inflation effect. And as long as you index contracts to inflation, that shouldn't be a problem. But it's probably also the case, economists are still debating it, that what's called the real interest rate, the interest rate once you've allowed for inflation, probably has gone up from the incredibly low levels of 2019, about 0% real across the world for risk-free investments, to maybe 1.5% or 2% today. Now, if that has occurred, then there is a one-off permanent increase in the cost of offshore wind, but it doesn't mean the prices won't come down. It's simply an interruption to what has been a very strong downward trend, and a trend which we think can be re-accelerated, recreated as we look forward. So the long-term trend will be down, but perhaps the rise in real interest rates is just a temporary kink in that curve, a slight upward deviation on a long-term downward trend.